In a transfer window already thick with smoke and mirrors, where every rumor feels like a loaded gun and every silence carries the weight of 1,000 intentions, a single name has become the gravitational center of England's feverish football summer. A name whispered through the marble corridors of power at Old Trafford, scribbled on whiteboards behind locked doors in North London, debated in WhatsApp chats among agents and intermediaries, and tweeted by millions like it's the next prophecy in a sport that worships its own mythos. Bryan Mbeumo, the Brentford dynamo, the unsung architect of a mid-table miracle, the man who, without ever quite chasing the spotlight, now finds himself the focal point of two of the Premier League's most storied institutions, Manchester United and Tottenham Hotspur, circling like predators with very different visions but one common obsession, because this is not just about a player, not just about a positional upgrade, not just about securing pace on the flank or goals in transition. This is about identity, vision, rebirth, and perhaps most crucially, it is about belief. Because when Fabrizio Romano lets slip to his millions of followers that Mbeumo is still giving priority to Manchester United, the words do more than inform. They echo, they tremble, they split the footballing universe into two timelines. One where Mbeumo wears the famous red and becomes the defining face of Ruben Amorim's new revolution, and another where he follows the familiar heartbeat of Thomas Frank into the unknown future of a Tottenham Hotspur side desperately craving an identity beyond the ghosts of Ange Postecoglou. And what makes it all so tantalizing, so volatile, so narratively rich is the detail that the Spurs hierarchy has already moved beyond traditional courtship, already reached that dangerous but decisive phase where requests become demands and demands become ultimatums. Because Thomas Frank's move to Tottenham is more than a managerial appointment. It's a strategic reformation, and his very first ask, his foundational pillar, the player he wants more than any other, is Mbeumo. Not because he's flashy or headline-grabbing or sponsor-friendly, but because he's a system player, a man who breathes tactics, who becomes the link between ideas and execution. And that request alone sends tremors through Manchester, where Amorim, himself a tactical purist, a system-obsessed technician with a background forged in the geometric precision of sporting CP, is fighting a battle not just of salaries and selling points, but of philosophy and persuasion, because Mbeumo knows what Frank can offer, has lived it, thrived in it, become the player he is today because of it. And that makes United's job not harder, but more fragile, because one misstep, one vague promise, one moment of hesitation, and the pendulum could swing violently back toward London. And it's within this emotionally and strategically charged cauldron that every whisper matters. Every text sent between agents is a spark. Every glance from a director is a potential tell in this poker game of monumental stakes. And while it's true that United's offer dwarfs Spurs' initial bid, $200,000 a week compared to Tottenham's $130,000, a financial message loud and clear, it's also true that money doesn't always win, not for players like Mbeumo, whose rise was never about headlines but about understanding, trust, roles clearly defined and intelligently implemented. Because under Frank at Brentford, he wasn't just a winger, he was the tactical fulcrum, the quiet chaos agent who stretched defenses in transition, tracked back with discipline, found seams between center backs and fullbacks, and became the heartbeat of a 3-5-2 system that often morphed into a 3-4-1-2 in possession, a formation in which Mbeumo played both architect and assassin, especially when Ivan Toney dropped deep, allowing him to attack space, interpret angles, and exploit pockets of disorganization with surgical timing. And in that context, he became more than a threat. He became a statement, the kind of player who doesn't demand a system be built around him, but who elevates whatever system he's placed into. And now, as Frank attempts to reconstruct Spurs into something with coherence, into something that doesn't wobble between philosophies with every managerial sacking, Mbeumo is the first brick in the wall, not just because of what he offers tactically, but because of what he symbolizes: a return to clarity, to positional discipline, to tactical literacy. And you can almost see it already, Spurs lining up in a 3-4-2-1 with Mbeumo playing just off the striker, not as a winger per se, but as an inside forward drifting into half spaces, dragging fullbacks out of position, exploiting vertical lanes for the likes of Son and Kulusevski to slice through, or maybe even operating as a wingback in an aggressive, high-risk press where his work rate and positioning intelligence become deadly weapons. And one in transition, one in structure, and yet, despite all of this, despite the emotional pull, the familiarity, the tactical comfort, Mbeumo continues to hesitate, continues to pause, continues to give priority to Manchester United. And in that pause lies a universe of meaning because it means Amorim has promised something powerful, something believable, something future-defining. And if the reports from Carrington are true, if the leaks aren't just smoke but fire, then Amorim has painted a picture for Mbeumo that transcends money, that touches legacy, because Amorim doesn't just see Mbeumo as a winger, but as the key to United's metamorphosis, the engine that transforms the team from reactive to proactive, from scattered to symphonic. And his plan, as it's being described in the corridors of the club, is surgical. United would shift to a narrow 3-4-3 with Mbeumo on the left, not hugging the touchline but operating in the half space, serving as a wide forward whose job is not just to score, but to stretch, to drag, to overload, to connect with Bruno Fernandes in the interior, to combine with Kobbie Mainoo in the pockets, and to trigger the press the moment possession is lost, because Amorim is a disciple of spacing and structure. And in Mbeumo he sees a unicorn, fast enough to threaten, smart enough to recover, disciplined enough to maintain shape, and selfless enough to sacrifice for the system. And when you consider that vision, the hesitation makes sense because, for Mbeumo, the choice is no longer about salary or Champions League appearances. It's about who sees him most clearly, who understands not just what he is, but what he could become. And while Frank offers a safe road well-traveled, Amorim offers the chance to be the centerpiece of a reinvention, the cornerstone of a new United where no one is bigger than the plan. But some are essential to it, and that is perhaps the most compelling pitch of all. And yet, the numbers don't lie. United's second bid of $50 million plus $10 million in add-ons is still shy of Brentford's ideal $70 million valuation. But sources close to the club say 62.5 to 65 million would trigger serious movement, referencing the Matthias Cunha precedent. And as United prepares that third offer, believed to be within that range, Spurs are not out. They're lurking, quietly confident that Frank's emotional connection could override any numerical edge. And insiders say Frank has already made his case to Mbeumo's camp. At Spurs, you'll be the heartbeat, the fulcrum, the tone setter, not one of many, but the one. And unlike United, where Rashford, Garnacho, Sancho, and Antony crowd the narrative, at Tottenham your shadow will stretch farther. And if that emotional pitch lands, if it resonates in the gut, not just the mind, the entire deal could pivot in hours, not days, because transfers like this don't live in the public domain. They live in the spaces between, in the silences, in the text messages not sent, in the calls that go to voicemail, and as the deal hangs there, suspended between desire and delivery, Mick Brown, former scout and plugged-in insider, tells Football Insider the deal is advancing and should be sealed soon. And that word, soon, is both a promise and a warning because it suggests finality, the kind of finality that changes tactical diagrams and fan expectations in one clean stroke. And yet, if football has taught us anything, it's that nothing is done until the contract is signed, because how many times have we seen deals collapse at the 11th hour? Hijacks in hotel lobbies, cold feet at the medical table, last-minute offers from clubs no one expected. And so United fans scroll Twitter like gamblers at a slot machine, hoping for the "here we go," while Spurs fans hang on to the romanticism of a Brentford-born reunion. Mbeumo in white, reborn under Frank, leading a project built not on superstars but on coherence, chemistry, and belief. And in the center of it all is Mbeumo himself, the quiet storm, the stillness in the middle of this tempest, the player with the power, the leverage, the choice, and perhaps that's the most fascinating subplot here. That whichever shirt he wears next season, it won't be because he was lured by money or pressured by agents, but because he looked at Ruben Amorim and Thomas Frank and saw in them not just coaches, but mirrors, reflections of what he wants to be, not just as a footballer, but as a legacy. And so when he finally chooses, that moment won't just ripple through Manchester or London, it will reverberate through tactics boards, dressing rooms, and sporting directors' offices across Europe. Because in an era defined by chaos, by reactive moves, by panic buys and short-termism, Mbeumo's decision, measured, deliberate, belief-driven, will stand as a testament to something rarer. Clarity, vision, and the power of one player to alter the trajectory of two titanic institutions with nothing more than a signature and a dream.